All right, welcome back to Alum House Sound. Today we're diving into the nitty-gritty of the effects. Now in the previous videos we've talked about the effects for drums, the effects for vocals, and the effect that I'm using for everybody, including my band. But today we're going to talk about how I EQ and compress both the send side and maybe the return side to further refine the sound that I get with these effects. Now again, all of these effects, these are all on board within the X32 or the M32 console. So I'm not using any Waves plugins, I'm not using a DAW to treat my sound. Everything is built into this console and available for you if you're running one of these products. So let's dive in and we will see where we get with using EQ and compression on our effects. Let's get started. All right, so let's dive into these effects here. We've got a variety of things we can talk about. In previous videos, we've talked about the 4 different effects that I'm using. You can see those here. The effect 1 is going to be an ambience, which is for my top end kind of shimmery vocal reverb. The second ambience here, effects rack 2, is my drum reverb. Then I have a vintage verb, which is effect rack 3. That's everything goes through that effect. And then finally, effect 4 is my delay and chamber, which is a vocal delay, but also has a reverb attached to it to help soften that delay up. So this kind of is my third layer here on my console, on the full console. But the effects returns here, we've got effects 1, 2, 3, and 4 for my returns. But over here, these are the send side. And I want to look at the send side first, just to make sure we've got a concept of what's going on. So if I come up here and take a look at the channel strip of this actual effect send, so you can see here I do have some EQ turned on this one. No compression on this, but this is my vocals going into this effect. So effect 1, vocals go in, they hit the ambience, and then when they return over here, you can see that I have some additional EQing going on. If we take a look at that here, this is the EQ that's going on for this effect return. So I'm knocking off some of the top end that comes back and just some other things here that I felt like I needed to clean up. Now that effect has a low cut at 500 Hertz, but we still get some frequencies that come in down here. All right, so looking at this drum reverb here, you can see that we do have both EQ and compression turned on. So let's look at the EQ first. All right, so this EQ, this is altering the drum sound before it goes into the effects rack. This just helps to clean up some different frequencies, some overloading frequencies, I guess. The top end of the cymbals, this 500 Hertz range, kind of some of the hollowness. The 200 Hertz range, sometimes the snare drum can get a little carried away there. And as you can see, taking out most of the low end. All right, let's look at the compressor though for this. So the compressor, I'm running a 3:1 ratio, and you can see I've got my threshold, turned down appropriately. What this is doing for me is controlling the drums before they go into this effects rack. So if I get all of the random splashes and punches and everything else from the drum sound before it goes, if I control that before it goes into the effects rack has a much better chance of sending something that's pleasant out the other side. So we've got that control going in, and again, we've got it set up where I'm EQing first, compressing second, and then it goes into the effects rack and it gets returned. And in that return, coming over here, we have some further EQ happening after that effects rack. You can see here, let's take a look at the EQ, where I'm dropping down, this is roughly 2K on the reverb. That would get in the way potentially of my vocals. So I'm just softening that up some. And then we've got this down here around 500 Hertz, removing some of just the muddiness, and the low end. Obviously, we're going to be dropping that just to help clean up that reverb sound and keep it more on the top end of the spectrum. Let's take a look at what I'm calling the all verb. We can first look at the mix that goes into this one. This one has a mixture of, you can see drums, band, various levels, even my vocals, my second layer here. I've got my pads and my keys go into this. So this vintage verb grabs everything. All right, let's go back here and we'll see. Here we go. So all verb, and let's look at the channel. So again, I've got some EQing happening first. EQ here. And then we do have some compression that's happening. Just a light bit of compression here, 3-to-1 ratio. This is just kind of controlling the spikes that would be going into this reverb. It's just softening it up some. You can see I've got pretty standard attack here, hold and release. They're all standard. No makeup gain. It's just kind of taking out some of the peaks and gluing everything together before it goes into this reverb. Now when the reverb comes back, let's look over here, and we do have some EQ happening again on this reverb, so we'll pull that up and take a look at it. This one has kind of a standard setup, cutting out the bottom end. Apparently this kind of 1000 hertz was getting a little carried away on that vintage verb when I had all of the instruments in there, so I pulled some out. All right, finally, let's take a look at the delay and chamber. The delay and chamber, again, is just for vocals. And we've got a little bit of EQ happening going in to this effect, just some low cut going into the effect. That's because we notice that we have some rumbles, some room sound, some drum bleed that goes into those vocal mics. So this is helping to kind of cut some of that mud out before it goes into the delay. I don't need that stuff getting delayed. I still want the body of the vocal. That's mostly what I want to be delayed, but the rumble, we don't need any of that. All right, and let's look at the return here. Oh, no compression on this. The compressor is turned off. So let's look at the return on this delay and chamber effect. And here you can see that we do have some EQ, so we'll take a peek at that. Here we go. So this is the EQ of the affected sound. So I'm taking out a bit of that top end down to 9K. I've got this drop here in the middle, and this is going to be in the 600 hertz range, and then the low cut at around 100 hertz. So that's the EQing and compressing that I'm doing on these effects, both going into the effects racks and as they come back. And so hopefully that helps you make some tweaks on your setup. All right, so there it is. Don't be scared to put some EQ and maybe some compression on your effects. You can have some drastic sound changes that maybe you're gonna like. So if you EQ the send side, that's gonna adjust the tonality going into the effect. EQing what comes out on the return side obviously is going to affect what is heard that's added into your mix. So compression on the send side also will help to smooth it out. That's really valuable on drums. And that way the effect can be so much more efficient and give you a nice clean sound to work with in your mix. So as always, like, share, and subscribe. I hope this video has been informative and helpful for you. And if it is, share it around with somebody, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.